Hey everyone, it's Penny with Specialty Outdoors, and today I'm going to show you how I make a curved fabric mask. This is called an Olson mask, and it's a little more fitted than the pleated masks. I've been making both styles. This one takes a little bit longer to make, but I really like how it fits and how it looks, and it's really comfortable to wear. I'm going to make a couple assumptions in this video, basically that you have some basic sewing skills and that you have both a serger and a sewing machine. I'm going to leave out little things like actually cutting out the fabric with a rotary cutter, because I'm going to assume you know how to do that with a rotary cutter or scissors. So let's talk about what pattern we need. You will find these all over the internet. I went to go back and download this one and I found like 6 of them, so they're all out there everywhere. This one in particular has 4 sizes on it: child, teenager, woman, and man. And some of them have a seam allowance added, some of them don't. So be sure you read the instructions on whatever file you're getting as to whether you're going to need to download, or to add a seam allowance. What I did with mine is I traced it onto a piece of file folder. If you have tag board, that's even better. But when you do this, you can use the pattern multiple times and it's not going to get trashed. You know, you're not going to shred it with your rotary cutter, bend it, or whatever. I put a 1/4 inch seam allowance on mine. This is the regular women's size, but also I marked 3/4 inches in, because this is where I'm going to cut the lining piece. So the lining piece is the same as this, but then we trim the edge off, and that gives you the inside piece where the filter is. So I'll show you how we get these ready for sewing next. Alrighty, so what I've done here is I've used my pattern and my rotary cutter and my fabric to cut out my inside and outside piece. The outside piece is just some printed quilting cotton, and if you layer your pieces right side together, when you cut them, they'll be ready to sew for the next step. This piece is the same size as the pattern, and then with this lining piece, we're going to need to trim off this little edge piece so that we can have it be the pocket. And we do that, just a 3/4 inch off the outside, and that's all you need to do. So now we're going to stitch the center seam on these, and I'll take them over to my regular sewing machine. So I've got my 2 pieces, 2 parts of the mask here cut out and ready to sew. Everything is right sides together. And when I sew these, I'm going to sew them with the pieces in the same direction. So I'm going to start at the top of the point, sew down the curve, and then on this one I'm going to start at the top of the point and sew down the curve. And I'm going to chain them up. If you haven't ever seen chain sewing, it's where you shove one piece in right after the other under the pressing foot without stopping and starting again. It's a great way to speed up your sewing. I'm only going to take a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. Some of the videos show you doing clipping your curve and pressing it. And I feel that with this, the seam is on the curve anyway, so the bias of the fabric is going to help it to bend naturally into the curve. And a 1/4 inch is a pretty small seam allowance, so really you shouldn't have to do any pressing or clipping and just finger pressing. So we're going to take a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch this seam, and we're going to finger press it open. We're going to make sure that that 1/4 inch seam allowance is pointing towards the machine, and by pulling on it and finger pressing and kind of shaping it as we go, see how I'm kind of working with the curve here, this will give us a really nice shaped curve on the top stitching without pressing and without clipping. same thing on our outer piece. So I made both of these. The seam allowances are all going to the same direction, and I'll show you what we use this for later on. Our next step is we're going to take our pieces to the serger and do some construction at the serger. All right, so here we are at the serger, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our lining and we're going to, our pocket lining, and we're just going to serge the short edge. And that will keep this from raveling. An alternative is you could turn it and stitch it, but I think the serger part of it gives it a much nicer look. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to seam the two main seams on this using our serger. And one of the reasons when we did our sewing on the top stitching is both the seam allowances are going the same way. Then when we reverse it, when we put the right sides together, the seam allowances are going opposite directions, and you can line them up so they're kind of abutting each other and they kind of hold themselves in place. I'm going to use a couple of clips here, but I have been doing this without clipping, just holding things into place and stitching them. And this is going to give you a nice finished edge right out where the binding goes on. So we're going to do the top seam and go all the way around. So you see we've done the top seam, so that's a construction seam, and then we're going to do the bottom seam the same way. All right, so here's what our serger construction looks like for this part. We have the edge of the pocket, and then we've done the upper seam, or the lower seam, and the upper seam, and we're ready to go to our next step back at our regular sewing machine. Here's our inside out mask. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn it right side out. And again, some of the videos have you pressing at this next step, and honestly, I don't think it's necessary. We can use our fingers and tension to hold everything out. We're saving a little time. We don't need to use the iron. So you want to turn this inside out and kind of get it mostly to shape. So I've kind of got it mostly to shape here. And we're going to top stitch it, or edge stitch it, on the inside. And again, with these curved seams, you can just pull them flat, and you want to roll this facing seam to the inside just a little bit, and that will give you a nicer finish. We start at the very edge so that our serged piece of the main body is down. Again, I don't use pins. If you want to pin and clip, go right ahead, but I find I'm very comfortable using just my fingers to do all these steps. So I'm going to edge stitch, guiding around the curve really carefully. So I'll pull it out again and finger press it. So there we go, there's the top edge all stitched. And now we're going to do the bottom edge the same way. See, by putting a little tension on it and just pulling it out, it comes nice and flat. is now ready for the straps. This is a good time to cut off all your little threads so that you don't have to trim them later. And so for the next step, you're going to want 2 straps cut on the straight grain of either a coordinating or not coordinating fabric. And so they're going to be cut 35 inches by 1.5 inches. I do detail this method of finger pressing the straps and putting them on, just that part of it, in a separate video, but I'll go ahead and show it in this video too. So I have my strips cut here, and I have a little measuring thing here on my table. And what I do is I lay it out, and you can't see the 12.5 inch mark, but I will make 2 snips at 12.5 inches. This gives you a little tiny clip mark for what you're going to do with your strap installation. You lay my straps out right side up with the short end, because the 12.5 inches gives you a short end to work with. The short end will go on the bottom of the mask because it's where the tie goes around the neck, and the long piece, which is all the rest of it, will go off the top of the mask. You want to sew these straps on right sides to the mask. So I'm going to start, I just had my strap laid out right side up, so I'm going to lay it out right side up like so. And you see I've got it matched up with the notch there. And I'll do about a 3/8 of an inch seam here. And then you saw I laid both my straps out together, so this other one is already in position. I have my mark. And then I'm just going to flip this around and do this side. So we have both the straps on the mask, and we have them right side to the right side of the mask. Right side of the binding tape is the right side of your tie. And for the putting the tie on, again, this is detailed in a whole nother video. So I have my strips cut here, and I have a little measuring thing here on my table. And what I do is I lay it out, and you can't see the 12.5 inch mark, but I will make 2 snips at 12.5 inches. This gives you a little tiny clip mark for what you're going to do with your strap installation. You lay my straps out right side up with the short end, because the 12.5 inches gives you a short end to work with. The short end will go on the bottom of the mask because it's where the tie goes around the neck, and the long piece, which is all the rest of it, will go off the top of the mask. You want to sew these straps on right sides to the mask. So I'm going to start, I just had my strap laid out right side up, so I'm going to lay it out right side up like so. And you see I've got it matched up with the notch there. And I'll do about a 3/8 of an inch seam here. And then you saw I laid both my straps out together, so this other one is already in position. I have my mark. And then I'm just going to flip this around and do this side. So we have both the straps on the mask, and we have them right side to the right side of the mask. Right side of the binding tape is the right side of your tie. And for the putting the tie on, again, this is detailed. All right, so I've got my mask done with both of the ties on. The short piece is off of the bottom corner of the mask, which is what is here. The long piece comes off of the curved end. And to put these ties, to do the final step, we want to lay this out on our machine with the body of the mask towards the machine and the seam allowance for the mask out this way. And this is because we're going to fold this binding around like so. And this is the best way to do it for a right-hander. If you're a left-hander, I apologize, I don't know how to help you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this top of the binding, we're going to fold it in once, and then we're going to fold it in like on quarters. I don't know if you can see this. It's just folded in halfway, and then we're going to fold it again. And so you've got a little finished edge there. And I just tucked the finish edge under the needle, did a couple stitches to lock it. I leave the needle down, raise my presser foot up, and then I have the strap going straight towards me. And then you can just take your folds and tuck them in with your finger and hold them into place. So I've got my wide strip here. I'm folding to the center, and if you can see, folding to the center, and then I fold it again, and then just tuck it in with my fingers and top stitch it. When I get to the edge of the mask, I want to do a little back stitch, because we want these to be nice and strong. They're going to be washed a ton and worn a ton, so we want to do good quality construction. I continue to just fold it in sections, back stitch again at the other end of the mask. Then once I have some length to work with, I can fold it again, tuck it in. And then when I get to the end, same thing, you fold it in, you make your two little folds to the center, you hold it, back stitch to lock it, and your strap is done. You'll do the other strap the same way, and then you'll have a great mask that you can wear filter in, ready to go. So there we go, folks. Another mask done. Have a great day and be safe out there.